Welcome everyone. I'm here with Joni. We are going to have a nice chat today with all of you. Hope you enjoy as much as we just enjoy being together and feeling the love and the connection and the relaxation. And Joni has been a Course in Miracles student for quite a few years and actually came down to a mystery school and just dove in. We were coming initially for a couple of weeks, and then
Well, I figured it was an easy out. If I got scared, I could leave.
you could leave. Just planned for 2, and then you stayed for 6.
Oh, I knew I was staying for 6
Yeah.
because my plane reservation was for 6.
Okay.
But I was playing,
Yeah. You just give yourself a little out card just in
totally.
case.
I did.
Yeah. Well, that's so beautiful because I think what we're talking about today, I think Eric put the title up, but actually we're just talking about authenticity. We're talking about, you know, really connecting and from a deep place with what you feel, and then being open to open further, because it's a very deep journey. And with Jesus leading the way, that's our standard. That's our way shower. So I feel that with your heart, you just have this.
It's a sure thing.
Yeah, you're like saying, Jesus, you show the way, and then that's why we're here talking right now, because of that. So I thought we just could talk. You can just share maybe some of your impressions or insights. Just this was a walk of trust for you.
It really is. It really, really is. I guess I found the course, or the course found me. I don't know which it was, in 1989. And so I was working at an eating disorder unit in a hospital. And one of my colleagues said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Course in Miracles meeting." And I thought, my ears really perked up because I didn't hear of it before. And I thought this would be good. So I found my people. I found a great study group and became a member of that for many, many, many years. Um, we read the course, we studied it, we discussed it, all the usual stuff. And then we started going up to Roscoe because Ken and Gloria Wapnick, were doing academies almost every weekend or every other weekend up there. They were very busy. And it was wonderful. I mean, I loved the course. I loved to study it. I loved the academies that Ken did. They were wonderful, and it was a hotbed of new thinking, and people were coming from all over the States, all over Canada. They were even starting to come in from Europe. And so we went as often as we could go. And so until, and studied and, did all of those things. I was a copious note taker. I don't even know how many notebooks full of things I've written down. Everything that I heard went on that page. I must have, over all of those years, gone through at least 4 course books because they were all dog-eared and marked up and all that stuff. And at some point, Ken and Gloria moved the foundation out to Temecula, California. And I'm not sure exactly when that was, probably, I don't know, 2005 or 6 or something. And so, yeah, I dutifully got on a plane and I flew out to Temecula for many years until Ken became very ill and then he passed away. So out of the 33 years that I've been a student of this wonderful course, 28 of them were intellectualized, truly. I loved the course, I studied hard, but I never made that connection of love with Jesus. Today it's absolutely mind-boggling that I didn't, but I didn't. And so, well, it just went on for a long time. So 28 of those years, I was just in my head, pretty much. And so it must have been around 2018. I was looking out at the world, and I liked being a student, but it wasn't really doing all that much for me, to be honest with you. And so I thought to myself, I don't like what I see out there. The world's upside down. All this political insanity was going on. Forest fires were raging. I mean, global warming. I'm looking out there and thinking, oh my Lord, there's got to be more than this. There just has to be. And I think at that point, there was a prayer in my heart, and I just said, please help me out here. I don't know where I'm going. And I really want more, and I know there is, and I don't know how to get there, and I don't know what to do. And I think at that point, I guess if I look at it now, all heaven broke loose because truly it did. I mean, it started with teeny little prompts and, little ideas. And I guess I started to listen. And two major things happened for me, the greatest of blessings. And the first was I was in a friend's home, and on the bookshelf, I saw he had a little book, not a little book, it's pretty thick, and it was called Autobiography of a Yogi. And that was the autobiography of Paramahansaji Yogananda. And something said to me, pick up that book, and I did. I went straight to the library. I had to renew it 3 times because it's so thick. And I read it very carefully, and this was you could see this beautiful master. You could see he had a heart that just didn't quit. And so I thought to myself, you pay attention here. And I heard 3 things from Yogananda that he taught me, and I so love him for this because I really didn't know how to pray from the heart. I didn't. I just never did. Oh, I prayed all right, but I didn't pray that way, that deep way. And he taught me how to pray from my heart. He taught me what devotion was in that book. And another thing he made very clear in that book, what he said, don't think you're going to get very far if you don't create a relationship with the Creator, with your Father. He said, don't think you're going to get too far. And I really never thought about it quite like that. I mean, fathers, that father was, I don't know, on a throne somewhere with a big, gorgeous gown, or I don't know, but it wasn't, I didn't feel that way initially. So, and the third thing he said was, you must find community. You must. And I thought to myself, well, good luck with that. Here I'm sitting in Rochester. Well, I mean, it's not a huge city after all. And I thought, well, I'll just put it out there. And I looked under Yogananda, and don't you know, 2 miles down the street from me, there was a lovely institute. It was the Assisi Institute, and it was I mean, it just blows my mind when I think about it today. It's basically comprised of Yogananda devotees, Christian mystics, and some course people. I mean, of all the things in the world to run into, can you imagine? So I became part of that community, and now we're rolling into COVID. And so now everybody's locked down. You can't go anywhere. And so they had a Zoom number. So I just put it in my little computer thing, and I started attending all their services and stuff. They didn't know who I was. They didn't even know I was out there, but I was part of their group and they didn't know it. But anyway, so that got me through the COVID part pretty much. And the second thing, and I think maybe probably more important, that I ran across in my email that Judy Scotch was doing a podcast called Miracle Voices. And so I started to listen. I thought, well, I'm home anyway. I'm not going anywhere. And so the 4th or the 5th guest happened to be somebody named David Hoffmeister. And I listened to that podcast, and I thought, oh my Lord, I think this is what I'm looking for. This is the missing piece. And so the voice said, now I've got a voice. And this little voice is telling me, you better listen to that podcast again. So I did. And then I thought to myself, I'm going to check this out on YouTube. And I did. And of course, there you were, everywhere. And I mean, you could listen for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 20 minutes. I mean, however much time you had, it was there. And so I started listening a lot. hours, just hours, and taking it in and taking it in and getting a whole other perspective on the course. I mean, like, oh my, I didn't know any of this. I had no idea that that's what I was really supposed to be doing, listening and following. I had no idea. I had no idea that I wasn't supposed to be people pleasing and having all these private thoughts, which of course I did. And um, so this went on for quite a time. And maybe you and Francis were having conversation on one of them, and I heard you mentioned a monastery, and I thought, are you kidding me? Since when does Course in Miracles have monastery? And I thought, you should check that. Voice said, you should check that out. So I did. I checked that out, and there were two of them. One was in Utah, and the other one is in Mexico. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to Mexico. I'm never doing that. So I find out, well, nothing's happening in Utah. If you want to do something, you have to go to Mexico. So then I start to read about tabula rasa and, mystery school. And I'm thinking, mystery school? Oh my, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. And so it might have been about a week later, I was looking in I just went out for my mail, and there's this great big yellow postcard. Some company was advertising something, and in big black letters, it said, "You are chosen." And I thought, you got to be kidding me. That's the ridiculous. Again, I remember you telling the stories about billboards and all this stuff, So I thought to myself, oh, no, this can't be happening. And so I go back to watching more things, and I'm really reading all of the information about the mystery school. And this little voice says again, you should go. And I'm thinking to myself, really? You just want me to pick up and go somewhere for 6 weeks and I don't know anybody down there? And what am I going to be doing there? And all the rest. And so, don't you know, 3 days later, I get another postcard in my mailbox, a great big yellow postcard that says, "You are chosen." And I thought, oh, come on. Are you kidding me? so, and so I said, okay, Jesus, I'm really trying hard here to have some faith, but you got to give me more than 2 postcards. I'm sorry. I'm not a spring chicken here. I'm 81 years old. You want me to hop on a plane and go to Mexico? I don't know. And so I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, talk about arrogance, really. I'm going to pick up my iPhone. I had a New York Times news feed, and I said, and if I go through this whole thing and I see the word Mexico, I promise I will go. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Well, I'm reading for the first paragraph, nothing. Second paragraph has New Mexico, the state. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it's not Mexico. It's not good enough. Don't you know the third paragraph, Mexico, a whole little article about Mexico. And I just said, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening. I'll go. I mean, if you really want me to do something here, I'm learning that I should listen. I am really going to listen here. So that was February, and mystery school started, I think, the very last day of May or something like that. And so for those 3 months, the ego worked me over on such a level. I'm telling you, there were 40,000 reasons why I should not come. You're going to get lost in the airport. Atlanta's horrible. You have to go underground and get on one of those trains, and you're going to miss your plane. You don't speak Spanish. You don't know anybody. You're too old. What are they going to do with you down there? You're 81 years old, and what are they going to do with you? And it was awful. And so I somehow or other, I crawled to the airport. I said, Jesus, please, just one more sign, just one. And so I'm in the taxi. It's about 3:30 in the morning. I had a very early flight. And don't I see on a billboard, you're on your way. And I thought, oh my God, this just keeps happening. So I came down here. And of course, it was wonderful. And I got to meet an amazing staff and wonderful peers and awesome interns, and um, we really bonded. Lisa called us the 12 apostles because there were 12 of us, and we really we worked hard, we cried hard, we laughed hard, all of it. And there were a couple of things that I ran into down here that created such a deep pathway for me to Jesus that um, it still knocks me out. And one of them was the Urantia book. Never heard of it, and turns out Urantia was the history of the Earth, the planet Earth. And I skipped all the hard part. It's an enormous book, but there's a whole section in the back, about 1,500 pages, just about Jesus. And it was actually kind of like a blow-by-blow description of what he did when he was here, who he talked to, I don't know, conversations, everything you ever wanted to know. If you could sit down and talk to him, you would have asked him all this stuff. And so I started to read it. I started it here. And of course, it was so big, I couldn't finish it. But I did get the book and I read it all the way. I finished it and I read it when I was home. And what happened for me when I read that book, David, was that Jesus walked out of those pages and he walked right into my heart, because I didn't know that you could love like that. I just didn't know you could. And so, yeah, so that was pretty profound. And the other thing was, during one of the lectures, somehow or other, Eric mentioned a Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono. I never heard of that either. And so I went home and I was telling my brother and sister about it. And my sister went somewhere and got a little booklet and she sent it to me. And there's also wonderful music on, I don't know, YouTube or wherever, with the Ho'oponopono song, wonderful music. And so I used to sit on my bed, cross-legged, and I would turn the music on. And there's only 4 sentences in that sweet little practice. And one was, please forgive me, I'm sorry, thank you, and I love you. That was it. And I would play the music and I would sit on my bed, and every face in my life flashed in front of me. Every single, from my 5th grade teacher that I didn't like, all the way up to my mom and dad and, my kids and my siblings, and and thinking of all the forgiveness things that I need, all the things I wanted to say to them, all the times I was sorry, all the times that I wish I had done something differently, all the regrets in my life. I mean, my first husband, my ex-husband, I mean, we had a very challenging life together and a very challenging divorce. And all I could see was him sitting in light. All I could just see was him being that. And so I really, I don't know, that really worked for me somehow or other. So, yeah, and so, I was home, after mystery school, and we all said to each other as we were leaving, how are we going to do this? Oh my God, how are we going to do this by ourselves? We have this enormous, this wonderful support system down here, and how is that going to happen? And in the meantime, right before I left here, my daughter, I knew she was going to have some surgery, some abdominal surgery. And so that was okay. I was going to go home and, be supportive and do all that. Well, we get home, she has the surgery, and the next thing you know, she's got 3rd stage uterine cancer. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, are you kidding me? I remember you saying, don't think that once you say yes, it's going to be easy, because sometimes all hell breaks loose. And I thought, well, this is all hell, And so I kind of stunned. And I made a phone call to Susan. And I said, you're not going to believe this, but this is what happened. She basically took a bucket of cold water and threw it in my face. She said, that's an hallucination, right? And I thought for a second, and I thought, you know what? It is. It really is. And so she said, maybe you'd like to talk to Lisa. And I said, yeah, I think I would. So we had a conversation. And then I said, do you mind would it be okay if I wrote a letter to David? And she said, sure. So the next thing I know, I get a letter from you, very loving and kind. And at the tail end of the letter, maybe you'd like to come down for a couple of days. Maybe, a period of time might be helpful. And then Lisa offered an invitation to come. And then Susan offered an invitation to come. And I thought, 3 strikes and you're out. You should go. I had that voice again. I said, you better go. so, so yeah, I made reservations and took care of all of that business. But this was the thing. After that conversation with all of you, I could really see that this was my daughter's story. It wasn't mine. It really, and so I said to myself, you don't have to be sad or happy or angry or whatever you want to feel. All you have to do, you be the dreamer, stand outside and you watch this. And when she needs you, step in. And that's all you do. This is not your deal. And I didn't. I didn't have one tear. I didn't try to butt in to tell her what to do or anything. Even when she would say, Mom, what do you think I should do? I'd, you know what? It's really your decision. This is your boat. You have to drive it. And so she went through her process, and I won't go into all of that. But the bottom line out of that whole story was that my daughter ended up with such healing. She was able to write the letter that she'd been wanting to write for 30 years to her father, and she did it. And all of this cancer stuff brought it up, and she was able to do it. And she's standing up. She's standing on her own. She is handling this, and she's doing really well. She's gone holistic. She decided she didn't want to be bothered with any of that stuff, so she's not going to do it. And so I just thought, wow, when you don't stick your finger in there and try and stir the pot, look what can happen. So that's kind of more or less the story. So
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that's such an insight into how you do have to listen within and you do have to follow. And that's that relationship that Yogananda was talking about, that connection. I don't think there's anything more present that makes you feel more connected than those little prompts. And, you even hearing that little inner voice and bunches of signs and symbols, you can't miss it.
oh no,
Signs and symbols,
no.
bright yellow
Oh,
posters
I mean, it
and
couldn't have been crazier.
billboards.
And on the
Yeah.
way here this time, it was even crazier because I was still having oh, that's the other thing. I contracted COVID 3 weeks before I was to come here. And I thought, oh no, how's this going to work? And I thought, well, I'll be just one of those people who has, a couple of days of being uncomfortable, and you'll be good. Well, it didn't work like that. The first week I was dragging, and the second week it leaves you with this little crazy cough that doesn't want to go away. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to go down there? And my friends are saying to me, oh, I don't know about this. I don't think you should go. All the doubt thoughts, here they come. My friend said, well, you don't have a doctor down there, and what are you going to do if you don't feel well, and how are you going to handle this, and you still have a cough? And well, I tested negative, so I would never have come if I hadn't. I called Susan again. And right 2 days, maybe the day before I was supposed to leave, I said, Susan, I am not myself. I said, I'm not that great. I'm just coming out of COVID. I don't know if I should come. I don't know what to do here. And she's so funny. She said, you should come. She said, this happens all the time, I mean, talk about just wiping your ego off the map, She said, you should come. And I said, oh, I'll think about it. I said, I'm really not myself. And she said, you have an invitation. And I just said, yeah, I do. I'll come. And that was that. But on the way to the airport, I just was sitting there in my doubt state one more time. And I'm always looking for billboards now, because now seems to be a thing with Jesus, looking around and seeing what's out there. And the first thing I see is a big billboard, and all it says is big G-O with an exclamation point, go. And the second one on the right-hand side of the taxi said liberation. And the third one that I saw said, thank you for choosing. And at that point, I'm crying in the back seat. So at 3:30 in the morning on the way to the airport.
That's beautiful, though, because one of the ways that people stay stuck in just, we'll call it an intellectual uh, attempt to grasp spirituality, is writing it off as, well, I can't hear guidance, so I better just stick with the words. And I did a live stream yesterday, which you saw, where I was talking about Judaism and the Torah and the study, always books, 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 and study, and all the dialogue back and forth. And in their own way, they would pray, but probably maybe repetitive prayers using the words again.
Yeah.
And and so when that's all you seem to know, if that's the familiar, and then you follow a prompt to get autobiography of a yogi, you come in contact with an amazing master and says all kinds of things, three of them which just grab your attention like nothing you ever expected. You can see Jesus is like lifting you beyond what you perceived, the status quo, we'll call it, even the Course in Miracles status quo. And you had the blessings of a teacher that was very sharp metaphysically, so we want to honor that blessing. And yet those three things stood out. And then coming in contact with the Urantia book, which is, an amazing snapshot. I actually had students back in the 1990s, and uh, I had been to Roscoe myself around the same time, 1990, 1991, spent quite a bit of time there. And I had people, I was kind of transported myself already. So I had people who were there to translate, even from many countries, that would come and find me. And they would, with wide eyes, say, I'm supposed to meet you, or my husband just died. And they would take me out to the little town of Roscoe. Let's go get lunch because I have to talk to you for a few hours. And I just need to be reassured my husband is in a good place, because I've had dreams, but I don't know anyone to talk to about these dreams, or they think I'm crazy. So I had, mostly Jesus had me there in Roscoe to have a bunch of holy encounters with people from all over the world, where I was just used to bring comfort and blessing and this deepening experience. But I see also that this experience of even what you read in the Urantia book, it was part of taking you towards a leaping off point towards a real devoted life. Because once you come in touch with the teachings and the writings of enlightened being, of a master, then something gets activated that before that wasn't activated.
It does.
It truly gets
It does.
activated.
Yep.
And we're not talking about, necessarily the many words, the darshan or the shakti energy or the diksha or anything. It goes by many names, and even Christians could call it a born again experience, where suddenly their heart just expands and they feel Jesus. They feel a connection with God, like a direct connection. But the important thing, I think, is that you're ready. When you're ready, then the symbols appear. Or even hearing me talk about bumpers, stickers, and billboards and everything, it just gives the mind permission to say, oh, that little small still voice, thank you very much. And thank you very much for making it obvious. If my mind is doubting, you are zooming into me with these signs and symbols and this inner voice. And the combination of all that builds your confidence to go beyond, like in Star Trek, beyond, to explore the universe. This is exploring the depths of the mind.
It really, really was. And, for a long time, I thought, oh, I've wasted those years, all those 28 years. But I didn't, because I built I didn't, the spirit helped build scaffolding, really. It was empty, but it was scaffolding. And by the time I found all of these teachings and then that filled up the middle. So the whole thing all worked together in the end. So it wasn't really a waste, it was a long trip.
Yeah,
I would say.
yeah. It's kind of interesting because sometimes people talk in terms of like being in a career or something. Sometimes the women will say, "Well, I hit something like a glass ceiling. Like I was zooming along in my career, and then this invisible glass ceiling just was like a lid that I didn't expect. It was like, what is this?" But I think even on the spiritual journey, there can seem to be these kind of glass ceilings where the mind kind of slips a bit into I'll call it almost like a resignation or a laziness because it simply doesn't know there's so much more. It it surrounds itself with people and things like a cocoon, and it's kind of like that old Peggy Lee song. Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, then let's keep dancing. It's almost like make the best of it, based on what seems to be some kind of a ceiling. And oftentimes with A Course in Miracles, people don't really want to talk about enlightenment, or as Yogananda would call it, self-realization, even though I'd say the Course is packed, absolutely packed with focuses on that. Anyone who's read this section, the immediacy of salvation, be not content with future happiness,
Mhm.
for it's not your just reward, for you have cause for freedom now. That's an amazing sentence. If anybody glosses over that and starts just looking at a lifetime of uncovering the ego, a lifetime of struggle, of fear, of doubt, and if the unveiling of the unconscious mind, which of course we know we can thank like Carl Jung and many psychologists and psychotherapists and many spiritualities that point out, don't take the unconscious mind lightly. Certainly Ken would say that as well. Don't take
Oh,
it lightly. But
absolutely.
the pierce through into what I call divine providence, where you actually feel you're being carried experientially by the signs and symbols, by the presence underneath that, by the guidance. Your testimony right there was peppered with guidance witnesses, just filled with guidance witnesses. Here I was. Here's what I saw. Here's what I did. I had the fear. I had the doubt. Then this appeared. I called so and so, and this. Then my daughter's diagnosed with third stage cancer. Well, I can't. And COVID, I can't. I'm not myself with COVID, but still, the underlying premises, you are being guided, and it's showing itself even though there can be resistance at times, the guidance is still appearing. And when it comes down to that, when you even put it to the test and say, okay, I'm going to look through this thing and it has to have Mexico in there. Da, 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 New Mexico. No, not New Mexico. I said it has to have Mexico in there. And then boom, Mexico. Oh, but see, then you follow. And to me, that's part of the listen, follow, that I think when it's spirituality just becomes about the scripture or the study of it, or the uh, trying to. I mean, I heard that for many years, where I would go and do these many hundreds, thousands of gatherings, and then people would say, I would share something, they would say, I get that intellectually, but, and I would say, well, the but uh, contradicts the the get that. If I said I get that, but then it's basically saying I don't get that. Why we have to have the but
Yeah,
at the
right.
end. So you've kind of now almost just without your knowing the how, just with maybe the deep burning passion to know God getting activated in these ways, it's taken off.
You know, for years, reading the course, I mean, listen, some of it's not so easy to read in the first place with all the double negatives and the iambic, pentameter and all the rest of it. I mean, it's not an easy course to read in the first place. But now when I read those pages, oh, I mean, I Jesus just walks right in. He's there, right there. And I just couldn't do it before. I just couldn't get myself to that place. And as an amazing master teacher, um, and you as well, that both of you, as you and Ken are, I mean, I still didn't get it. I still couldn't grasp it. So what a grace, what a gift. I just, I, it makes my heart so happy that I finally get this, that what are you really doing here? You have to do this work. You're not going anywhere if you don't do this work. You can't. So it's all about the truth, and it's all about asking, for me anyway, who am I? I want to be part of that Christ. I want it. I want that. I'm not playing around anymore. I fiddled around for 28 years. I am on a. I want to know the truth now. That's it. The end. So
Yeah, I think I have met people who have told me that they studied the course for many years or even decades, and they kind of miss that part about this is a course in mind training. I was interested in the masters from the Far East. I was interested in saints and mystics, and having read all their writings and all what they went through and how it was daunting in their experience, and dark nights of the soul and hitting a wall, and after they'd kind of let go of what most people would consider most of the world, then they went down into a hole that was very surprising. They thought it would be peaches and roses, and it was very black, and they wrote about it. So to me, that gave me a context. And then I think, though, I could really see what Jesus was teaching in the course is the Holy Spirit needs happy learners. The Holy Spirit is the spirit of joy. The Holy Spirit's curriculum is a curriculum of joy. And I knew deep down inside that that was the key. But I think for my experience, like I actually did not have trouble reading the course. It was not a difficult book for me at all. Uh, there was one time Francis and I, we were in Australia doing a tour along the coast. And at one point, she just got the big smile on her face, and she looked at me and she said, "You know that course back and forth, and it actually isn't difficult for you at all." In fact, I had a friend who I met in Roscoe who came from England, and she was in such a high state of mind with rosy cheeks and bursting with joy. And when we would go around, somebody would say, "Who wrote this course?" And she would go, "I did." And with the biggest sparkle and twinkle in her eye, not a bit of embarrassment, or she was she was just so
mm,
elevated that she would say that
mm,
repeatedly. "I did," with that kind of enthusiasm. "I
mm,
did." And so, but Frances was smiling at me one day, and she just looked at me in my eye, and she said, "You knew this course before you got here." It's like people are talking about struggling with it so much and the way that it's written and everything. And it's as if you already knew it before you got here, kind of, or were you, and that's kind of the way my journey went, because prior to going up and meeting Ken and Gloria at Roscoe and going to the academy and so on and so forth, I had 3 revelatory experiences that where I went beyond time and space. I went into direct connection with God, where the whole world disappeared. So prior to my first trip to Roscoe, I had had 3 disappearances of the universe, full-blown, non-perceptual, directly into the light experiences. And therefore, I was kind of, actually, I wasn't struggling with the course at all. I initially, when I got it, I used it as an oracle. where I would just pray and open the book and get my guidance that way for about 2.5 years, from like 1986 through maybe 1988 or so. And then the voice was loud and clear, like it was for Helen. That's a advantage on the spiritual
I would
journey when
say.
you can hear it that clear, because it's not just like with Helen, it was like, what I said was this, what you wrote was that, now go back and don't change don't change the words. It was Jesus working so closely with a very good scribe, but basically there was so much fear and resistance. It was like, what I said was this, what you wrote was that, go back and do this right. And of course she called it insistent, like sometimes tried to put the pen down and refused to write, and or tried to lose the course, leave it in taxi cabs in New York City, and then it came back to her. I tried everything, she
Mm,
said. I couldn't get rid of the damn thing. She she was not thrilled with the assignment. For me, it was like it was it was so came to me, and through those revelatory experiences, that what happened preceding me to going to Roscoe for the first time. And I have dear friends in Rochester and parts of New York, all over really the world. But actually, I remember I was so into listen and follow at that point that it was, I think it was like 1990, and it was the winter time, and I actually was just wake up, do my course lesson, pray, listen, follow, use my oracle, and actually Jesus was actually guiding me by that time very specifically. So I remember thinking, yeah, I think it'd be nice to go to Roscoe. And I had a very beat up little car. I was living very simply, and I was following the guidance. I had left 10 years of university, and I'd left uh, jobs behind. I'd undone from so many things. I was kind of really rapidly in that way. And then with these mystical experiences, I was confident and fired up. I was like swallowed up in the Lord at this point before I go to Roscoe. So I'm thinking it would be nice to go to Roscoe, but I thought, this car, I don't even know if it'll make it to Roscoe. Actually, it's a pretty good drive from Cincinnati to the Catskill
it
Mountains.
sure is. Yeah.
So I thought, that's a pretty good trip to the East Coast. And so Jesus said, well, this morning I want you to go to a yard sale. I said, okay. So I had actually at that time it was a Volkswagen Rabbit that was quite old and quite worn down, and actually the bottom of the passenger seat, the floor had rotted and rusted. And my dad sometimes would hop in the car and he'd say, "What is it, the Flintstones?" You know, like he said, I could see the ground outside. This was a uh, pretty bad car. And I'm thinking, I don't even know if I could take that car. So I go to the yard sale, and I'm in my car. And on the way to the yard sale, it's only like 10 minutes away from my house. It's going, pss, 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 it's sputtering. And I'm like, huh, yep, this car is there. And then it sputtered and sputtered, and then it died right in front of the house where the yard sale was. And I mean, it went off, and it wouldn't. Oh my God, this is how Jesus is. This is before going to Roscoe. So I go there, I get out, and I go, and it's a yard sale, and I walk in the back, and the whole family is there. It's father, mother, and like 5 kids, and every one of them, the father, mother, and all the grown children, were hosting the yard sale. They saw me, and I would go up to them, and they go, "I know you." And then the next one would come, "We know him. We know him. Where do we know him from?" They all swore they knew me, but none of them could tell from where. And I thought, because I'm just at this point, I'm thinking, what a recognition. I'm going to a yard sale. All 5 people, including the parents, know me, but they don't know me. So I strike up very friendly, happy, talking. I spend a while there. I'm just enjoying the holy encounters, which is really the only reason I go anywhere, is for the holy encounters. And then finally, as I'm getting ready to leave, I just say, well, I'm going to go out. I hope my car starts, because I think it died in front of your front of, on your right in the road right before you, in front of your house. And they said, oh, our son, hey, and they called the son, you're selling a car, aren't you? And they said, yeah, I got a car I'm selling in the garage sale. And I said, so I go back. He says, come on back, let's take a look at it. It was a Chevy Chevette. It was a pretty old car. And he said, I'm selling it because I have to get rid of it. My parents want it out of the garage, and it needs a starter. It won't even start, but it needs a starter. But it runs. It's a good car, except it needs a starter. So I start praying, and I'm like, got to be kidding. I'm at a yard sale to get a car. And they all go, yeah, your car doesn't work.
Mm.
So the family got behind me, and they pushed me down the street in my little Volkswagen Rabbit that would not run. The family pushed me down the street to a mechanic. And they said, hey, his mechanic we know, here's David. His car won't start, but we have another car we're going to sell him for $100. And it needs a starter. So we'll go back and we'll push that car too here. And told the mechanic, I said, yeah, if you want to keep the Rabbit, you can keep the Rabbit, but I need a car that I can drive. So they put a new starter in the $100 garage sale car that I got at the yard sale from the son. And I went, now I'm ready to go to Roscoe. I got in the car and I just drove straight through. I think it was like over 14 hours. And it was snowing and ice was forming on the car. It was an old car, but it ran better than my, and that's how I got to Roscoe the first time, with lots of holy encounters when I got there, because there were very devoted Course in
Amazing
Miracles,
people. Yeah.
amazing people. And my
Yeah.
friend Dorothy, who was, she said, I wrote the book. She was in that state of mind, she, who wrote it? I did. She would say with confidence,
Mm.
because she saw it was just a reflection of her mind. So that began for me on a very experiential road to the Course. And then you and I have watched over the years, there was the copyright controversy. There was at one point, as I'm just happily traveling around, I think there was 7 concurrent
Yeah.
different lawsuits going on at the same time, and people would ask me all about that.
Crazy.
Whose side, or who's the right side? And I would say, what book are you reading? Who's the right side? What book are you reading? Where does it say take sides in the Course in
Yeah.
Miracles in all of the pages? Or I would travel around, and wars would even break out. I would be out doing so many gatherings, and I would just go from house to house, place to place, doing thousands and thousands of in bookstores, basements, barbecues, backyards, teaching what I would learn, letting myself be used to let Jesus speak through me as a conduit, teach what I would learn so my mind could be free. And then sometimes the war would break out, and Jesus would have me go to like a store where they sell TVs, and he'd have me walk through the store to pick up just enough information about the war that I didn't even know was happening, so that when I went to give the talk, it would be relevant. Jesus always wants to keep it relevant use of symbols. Don't put your head in the sand and pretend it's not there. Just let me scoop it up, like scoop up. And then it would be used very humorously. Or I would go down to Mexico, and one time I think I was in Monterrey, Mexico, and I noticed the people were so angry, even more angry and agitated than they usually are. And I said, what's going on? And they said, we are angry at our presidents. And I said, what do you mean your presidents? We're angry at your president, and we're angry at our president. We're furious, political, One time I went, Francis and I landed in Sweden, rural Sweden, and we got there about a day late, and the retreat had started the night before because we had some travel delays. And when we got there, we were with this group in southern Sweden. And when we first got there, I could just see people were really angry. This was like an angry mob at a Course in Miracles retreat. So we were like, "Hi, how you doing?" We greet everybody. Turns out they had hired a chef to do all the cooking for the thing. And the chef was one of these microbiotic thing, and prepared all the meals from this framework of really a kind of a go green
Oh,
chef. And they didn't, where's our cheese? How are we supposed to make our cheese sandwiches? And where is this? And and they were furious at, before we even got there, they were raging at the chef for the food that was being provided. And then we spent the whole time going into the teachings. One time we were teaching, I think, in Aarhus, and a friend hosted us kind of in a it was like a factory district of Aarhus, and right across the street from the place, from the loft where we were doing it, was a slaughterhouse. So they were slaughtering animals right across the street. And every time we would go out, because it was a factory district, to go eat or whatever, everyone in the workshop had to walk past the slaughterhouse and see the sights and smell the things. And whoa, that all came up. So it's been like diving into practical application. And then you going to the mystery school, that's kind of an offshoot of these. I used to do these 4 and 6 month retreats. 6 weeks, no, 4 to 6 weeks. I'm thinking 6 months. I think, well, people who live here would say that's how it feels now. I've been here, seems like forever. How many months have I lost track? But what it would do is we became so good at realizing people were coming to undo the self-concept, that the only way we make space for the vibrant holy instant is to, through a process of safety and security and trust, slowly dismantling, letting the Holy Spirit dismantle the mind from these self-concepts. And it sounds to me like even your 6 weeks with the mystery school kind of took you to a place, and after that call to Susan, that cold water call, that was a big aspect of starting to realize that everyone in the flock is on their journey. Everyone in the flock of birds, will say, has their own story, and that you just need to keep an eye on what's going on with you. That's where the rubber meets the road, and it sounds like you've
that has been
done that.
so helpful. I learned that here. You know, stay on your side of the street. You know, you don't have to go poking around in everybody else's emotions and everything else. Don't get caught up in that stuff, because it's a big distraction, and you'll never be able to focus on what you're here to do. And so, boy, and if it hadn't been for going to mystery school first, I don't know if that would have happened, honestly. I mean, I think it was just part of the plan. Go here, learn this, go home, practice, and it totally works. I could tell you, it really works. And I felt so free, and I could love my daughter through all that ugly stuff, and I didn't faze me. I still can't believe it, but it really didn't. And I'm sure she felt so loved, because I wasn't putting my 2 cents into everything she was trying to do, that it propelled her into a place where she wouldn't have gone if I hadn't, just stepped back and let her do what she needed to do. So it's contagious, this stuff. It really is. Yeah.
I think it too, you have to go beyond what seems to be familiar to keep being lifted up into this state of, I do not know what anything is for. Nothing I see means anything, but I need help. I need guidance. So there's a lot of non-dual paths that don't really even bring in the idea of guidance. It's very much focused on silence, on meditation, and Jesus addresses these things in the I need do nothing section, long periods of meditation, contemplation, fighting against sin. Your way will be different. A holy relationship is given you as a means of saving time. You are not making use of this course if you do not use what was made for you, and is basically saying this is made for you. This is no accident. It goes back to what Yogananda was saying about find a community. I think in the industrialized Western world, which is very much into the intellect, and kind of even in Europe went off into there is no God, um, all kinds of things, speculating, and we'll call it empiricism, materialism, Newtonian science, which none of that is really takes you to the heart of God. It's actually a defense against God. And what I find with Yogananda saying to you, find your community, is that he understood before he passed away, he understood the mechanism of how that mirroring and that reflecting helps you get in touch with what has been so denied from awareness. And it becomes so denied that the mind comes up with intellectual schemes and concepts, thinks it's actually awakening, when in fact, to quote Paul Simon, in fact, it's slip sliding away. The nearer your destination, the more you're slip sliding away. It's actually a pretty ingenious plan by the ego to get so caught up in the concepts that even bantering around the concepts, and that's what Judaism was doing, a lot of bantering
Yeah.
of the Torah.
Yeah,
But
you see that in the Urantia book.
yeah,
It really gets into
yeah,
that at big
it
time.
gets in.
Yeah.
But you've experienced it with A Course in Miracles, and many times people will tell me, they say, I had to finally, I was addicted to Facebook, but the worst thing was the Course in Miracle groups and the debating and the constant bantering,
Mm-hmm.
and people getting smashed for the first time here. Hi, what a beautiful day this is. No, God didn't create this day. Boom, it just just coming in for the first time. Wham, bam, bam, bam. So I have people that say, and they said, well, what was worse was trying to comment on the post, and then wham, they comment, they get their fingers sliced off. It's they were wondering, where is the love you said was
That,
mine, all mine?
yeah.
That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is this idea that there's something wrong with communities. I think a lot of times people think of communities, they think of ashrams, they think of India, they think of masters, and they're horrified because of the sense of autonomy, individual freedom, individual rights.
Right.
There's a big, strong ego attachment to all that. And then it's just label and dismiss. Like, well, this is a self-study pathway to God. This doesn't involve masters. This doesn't involve teachers. Of course, everything is a reflection of the mind, but a lot of label and dismiss goes on.
Yeah.
But I think it's like Jesus knows the prayer of the heart. When we're ready, it's just like it gets dropped in front of us, like
Yep.
Autobiography of a Yogi.
Oh, no question.
After all those years of studying the course, there it just drops in out of nowhere.
Where
just
did that
drops in. Yeah. And I think that's important too, because it's not that we have to latch on. In the introduction, it says free will does not mean you can establish the curriculum. It means you can only decide what you want to take at a given time. And then back in the manual for teachers, he says you can't even choose the form of the curriculum. That's a mind-boggling thing, because the individuals like to think, well, I'm going to be a Buddhist or a Hindu, Course in Miracles. I'm going to be, Zoroastrian. I'm going to do something, but that takes so much humbleness to start to realize that I just need to be open to the guidance, and that even the form of my pathway is part of a prearranged plan, that the script is written, and it wasn't a personal I that was, I'm going to go this way, and I'm through with this, I'm through with the Catholics, I'm through with, it's not like that at all. It's actually just staying wide open and praying every day. What do you have for me?
Yeah.
What, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And that's, I think, where you ignite into the
Yeah,
actual
that's the only
experience.
prayer.
Yeah, that's
That's
the
it
prayer.
in a nutshell. I remember years ago, Ken used to say all the time, he said, uh, the ego is foolproof, but it's not God proof. And so, it'll give you a run for your money. You better respect it, but no match, no match at all.
And even once Jesus uses a word like the ego is ingenious, but you start to realize that if you really pray sincerely and you really are open to the guidance and you just follow the guidance moment by moment that is given you, there's a simplicity to that. And it actually turns more and more, I think, into an ease. Like you start to relax into it. Like, it's not, my life is not my own. I don't have to figure out the future. Uh, Trust is showing me that everything that happened, there were no mistakes. Just the ego perception, taking something personally, like in the four agreements.
Yeah.
That one
Hmm.
four agreement always jumps up, like, oh yeah, that's the only issue. And then in the end, even with the topic of guidance, I think it has to be lifted up from this idea that the guidance is somehow to make a better personal you in the future, uh, a better you in the future, still a person. And then you start to discover, wow, all of the guidance I've ever received is taking me to the present moment. It's taking me to this instant. And like children, when they're
Yeah.
sparkly and they lose track
Yeah.
of time and space, and
Yeah.
mom and dad, they're so into the glee. It's amazing.
Yeah. One of the things I just found in my prayer life, lots of times in meditation and stuff, I would always end up in a puddle, just crying and crying and crying. And my big prayer is, and I think it's time, maybe shifting an inch or so. I want to laugh more. I don't want to be. I mean, I guess when you really love Jesus, you love him with your whole heart, and there are a lot of tears that go along with that. But I think I'm ready to laugh more. I'm kind of done with the tears. I want to. I read. I think it was in the Disappearance of the Universe, and either Persa or Arta. One of them said, "Well, Jesus really loves to laugh. I mean, he really loves a good laugh and a great joke, and he is very irreverent. So don't get all caught up in yourself. So
Don't get political with
yeah,
your humor.
yeah. I don't think you know anything. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think from all the years of working with the course since 1986 and the 31 years of travel, what what that did for me was help me just to get merge into the guidance. That's where you start to really feel in your heart, my mind holds only what I think with God, where you're not having the critic's voice chirping away, where you're not having this opposing influence just trying to always exert itself. Jesus says the ego speaks first, but it fades in the joy. Perfect love casts out fear, and Jesus is perfect love. So the fear, it just disappears, and then it's delightful. Then it's like that's part of the happy dream that is the step to back to eternity. But I always feel like little by little, as we go into this deeper and deeper, that that is just such a surrender, that you just get better and better at not taking anything personally, no matter what it is that you're experiencing. And that's because your perceptions shifts so much. You're not reading any meaning into things, and you feel more and more like the dreamer of the dream, where
yeah,
you're reminded of, watch, have a good laugh, let's have a good laugh together, yeah, another. And it
mm,
turns into a comedy show. I mean, even when I have little meetings here, I'll be start into something, start laughing, and then just ding, get a message that's even more funny, and then I share it, and we all burst into laughter. It does seems like that's the fruits of the spirit,
yeah.
is the laughter. hallelujah for the
Oh,
laughter.
yeah. That's for sure. Yeah, it's for sure. Yeah, this has been quite a trip. Boy, you couldn't have told me that after dragging along for 28 years, that in the next 5 years, my whole life would be so different, and I would feel so differently and be capable of loving in a way that I never thought I could. And even with my kids, my children came from my first marriage, and there there was just a lot of unhappiness, and my kids really took a beating, and I had a rough relationship with my daughter. It was just really hard, and a lot of things happened that I didn't know anything about, and that was part of the problem. But that didn't help out the situation. And when I see the healing that's gone on between my daughter and myself, it blows me out of the water. I mean, I've been working on it for a long time, but this has just put a rocket on it somehow or other. I don't see her as a daughter anymore at all. It's crazy. The role went away. I see her as a woman, somebody who's got her own mind and her own thoughts and her own journey, and then it's not mine at all. And the same with my son. They have their life, I have mine, and it kind of works out better that way.
You you are demonstrating the release from enmeshment, the release from codependency,
Yeah,
the release from specialness. Let's just call it
yeah,
specialness. That we
yeah,
we came here, and the ego set up quite a world with these family relationships, and even the languages we speak, and the countries we're in, and tried to take something very specific and have our mind get riveted as if we're it. And then the great insights come. It reminds me of Jesus, teaching, who is my father, mother, sister, brother?
oh
He
yeah,
that does the will of our Father in heaven is father, mother, sister, brother. In the Urantia book, it even says that Mary was
oh yeah. I
was
was
coming
surprised about
forward,
that. Oh
and
my
yeah,
goodness.
that throws even a deeper context
Yeah,
into the
does
whole thing.
does.
Or like when Jesus was arrested, and the authorities were taking him, and they were going to take a take the just beat him, just beat that body of Jesus. And uh, the apostle had followed along to come close. I think maybe it was Peter, to come close, maybe to go in, and then got into the same room where Jesus was, and they were ready to beat him. And Jesus just turns over to his beloved apostle and just nods. You can leave now, knowing how intense it would be for the apostle to
I think it
watch,
was John.
or maybe John. It was
Yeah,
John, yeah.
yeah,
So, but those little nuances
yeah,
show the love and the sense of everything being taken. Even little scenes like that, you get a perspective of, it's all about the love, and how the Spirit never gives us anything more than we can handle, because we're meant to grow in faith and expand in trust, and not, be feeling like we're thrown back.
yeah.
We're to move forward, opening up. So I had the same appreciation. But actually, when I had those students back in the 1990s that were saying, well, the course is great, David, but it's a lot of it is just way over our heads. It's not practical, irrelevant at all. So I said, well, let me go dig around. I found the Urantia book. I found the last teaching on the life and teachings of Jesus. So I made a book for my students called the Fish Book, and it had like a salmon cover and just a fish on the front, and it had teachings from A Course in Miracles and all the many parables, sermons, everything from the Rancha book, all into one teaching device. So there was only 4 copies printed. It was this
Is that
thick.
the Teachings of Jesus book? Is that?
It- this was with the early students.
Oh, oh, oh,
It
oh.
was literally, I had the Urantia, the last section of the Urantia,
Okay.
in with course teachings that I pulled to bring the metaphysics together with the examples. Because in the course, there's it just Jesus makes one reference to the prodigal son story, but not even going into detail. it's not a book of parables.
Yeah.
It's a book of fantastic metaphysics. And I think for me too, it's transfer of training. Uh, I know, like with Ken and Gloria, and like with many people, the temptations for lawsuits, the temptations to take a side, to take a stand, to, as he would say, be normal. But when you go into the depth of the teaching, in my defenselessness, my
Yeah.
safety lies. If somebody smites you on one cheek, turn the other
Mm.
cheek. Uh, if I defend myself, I am attacked. If you really go deep enough, you go into mysticism
You do.
and you go into mastery. And that mastery is not going to look like normal. I always, when people say, should we be normal? I say, well, actually look at Jesus. That if you read the Urantia book, that's the
Yeah.
least normal human life ever in the history of human life. So what you have to do is you have to take it so deep that, but at the beginning, I got so into divine providence because when you're just traveling all over the country to 49 states, and then you start to travel around the world to 44 countries, it's really out of your hands. Uh, you cannot bring the truth into the illusion. You cannot. You have to rely on guidance for everything. You have to rely on guidance to take care of absolutely everything. And that's what Jesus told me at the beginning. He said, if you'll do miracles with me and let me speak through you, I will handle everything of time and space. Everything? Food, lodging, travel, who I'm to meet, where I'm to go. You mean you will orchestrate absolutely everything? He said, yeah, I'll handle everything that doesn't matter if you stay focused on what does matter. And that's what took me into mysticism from the beginning. That's why I wasn't tempted by taking a side in the copyright controversy. That's why I wasn't tempted by, I would go to the places in one trip that ended up being the ones that were fighting each other in the copyright controversy. I was I was I was visiting all of them. And that's why when they
Funny.
said, which side are you on? I'm like, what book are you reading? Because on one trip, I was out, I went one trip in 1991. I went out Southwest, Circle of Atonement. Robert, he was married to Susan way back in 1991. Then I went off and I went up the coast, and I'm going up California, and people are saying, well, if you go to San Francisco, just make sure you avoid, the California Miracle Center. And I said, why should I avoid them? And they said, they started a church. It's terrible. And the ministers are gay and bisexual,
Oh
and they
my
said,
God.
please don't go. Guess where I went?
Of course, straight there.
And then as I was up there, I was going down, and I came to Wisconsin, and they had a place called Wisconsin Dells, and they said, oh, whatever you do, do not go there. But I was guided by Jesus to go right there. So when the copyright controversies come out, and there were 7 different lawsuits going, these were the lawsuits of all of my friends. And when I would go online, people would say, please do a teaching to teach. There was one big online, like online forum going on, and they said, please go on and set it straight. Please, these people are crying out for help. And I said, okay, I'll go on. And they they said, speak on the meaning of what a cult is. Come onto the forum and speak. Well, it was packed with, not so much with people that were following Ken, but it was packed with Marianne Williamson followers
Right.
and Endeavor Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went and did the whole teaching on cult thinking, I would not speak on the specific. I would just say, let's talk about cult thinking and spiritual guided, Holy Spirit thinking. And let's use the whole thing for just discernment between the wrong mind and the right mind and everything. So I went through the whole thing, and at the end, everybody was coming on with comments. Uh, a lot of the people who were following Marianne said, "There, thank God David came. That proves for once and for all that you people are a cult." And all the Endeavor people came on and say, "What do you mean? It's just clearly what he said proves that we are not called." And I was just like, that's just so much a testimony to perception is
Yeah.
selective, that you will
Yeah.
just call forth the evidence. And how Jesus would speak in parables with, for those that have the ears to hear, let them hear. He would just offer his graceful, deep, profound, transcendent teachings, and then like take what you want from it. But you ultimately can only receive this when you go purify your heart, when you allow this purification to occur. So it's beautiful, because that's, I think, all we're here to do is to shine our light and to actually be friends with everybody. And that's why it was funny for me when I was traveling. There's 3 lawsuits going, David. What's going on? 4. No, there's 5 Course of, no, 6. No, there's 7 Course in Miracles lawsuits. This is crazy. And it's like, but how does that affect your practice? You have the Holy Spirit and Jesus in your mind. Nothing of laws of this land are going to get between you and hearing the Holy Spirit's voice. There's nothing external that can actually block you, that can stop you, that can even delay you, that can hold you back, unless you want it, unless you still have a part of you craving that specialness and whatever. So to me, what a rich time we have both walked through, you with the Course in 1989 and me in 86, and then our time with Ken.
We probably were crisscrossing
we
along the way somewhere.
We probably met up there, and we look a lot younger.
Yeah.
When we met.
You'd say that again.
Now they're like, what are these 2 old geezers doing talking about the Course? We're young and vibrant, and if you add our years together, it's up over 140.
Oh my God.
145
that sounds like a lot.
years. That sounds like Ramtha or something.
It does.
It's like, we're like the voice of Ramtha together. Yeah. And you've got your purple on and your maroon, and I've got my blue. And
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we have a roving mic. If anybody, this is your chance. This is your chance to ask the old geezers. We're here now. We're not making promises. We're not making a lot of promises here, but we're here now. So if anybody would like to ask a question, this is your chance. It's all quiet here. Now we probably have a chat room, and we've just stirred up. There's like 1,000 reactions on there, and it's so nice and quiet here. Joni, what Joni's job is while she's here, she likes to go around and she picks flowers.
They let me off easy. I think they were afraid that I was so old and I was going to fall or something. So
they gave you.
So they let me cut flowers.
Cut flowers. Yeah.
I got out of all the hard stuff.
You got a little thing to go around. Look at my tool. I got a tool here now.
Yeah, that's
Cooking
good.
Flowers. Cooking food. Okay. Wow. What a quiet group. We must have really...
David, I have a question.
Yeah.
That I have, I'm not sure about this. In the Eastern, religions, self-realization, all those people, for them, it's all about chakras, energy centers. That's still form, right? So that's not spirit.
Yeah, that I always, when people ask me about the chakra system, one is one, and 7 is not 1.
Yeah.
And then when they say, but what about the Trinity? And I say, well, that's a good one three. The, Jesus says in the Course that the levels of the Trinity do not interfere with one another. So here he is talking about the triune, the Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but he's saying there's so much harmony that it's really basically appearing as three, but actually one.
Is one. Yeah.
And even the function of a creator, a creation, Christ, and a bridge, we'll call the Holy Spirit the bridge. But then he says the Holy Spirit is actually an eternal creation. So once you wake up, you don't need a voice. The voice was just part of you believing you were in a far country of time, space, and needed help, needed guidance.
Yeah.
So yeah, with the chakras, with the Kundalini energy and the spine, these are all things. A lot of times in the East, they talk a lot about like ethereal bodies, and Jesus is coming in with, "I am not a body, I am free." He's saying, go for the light. So I think for me, the revelatory experiences were very, very helpful because I had such a direct contact with abstract light that those things didn't even come to mind. I wasn't fascinated with chakras. I wasn't fascinated with Ayurveda diets or postures or poses or Kundalini energy. And of course, many people that I met were having a lot of those experiences, but that was also in their concepts of what they were raised with.
Yeah.
Even karma, when people say karma, like you're paying for things that you did in the past, when you really come to the Course and look at the holy instant, it's like this piercing of the veil. It's like seeing that, no, the past is not causative. The past never caused anything for us. It's a present cause called God, the Creator, and Christ, the effect of that present cause. How revolutionary that is. But I do find that in this world, even with the Course saying a holy relationship is given you as a means of saving time, the sleeping mind is still tempted to do a little mix and match. And Ken was very good at addressing, the Course is not Christian Science. The Course is not religious science. It's not this and this. I enjoyed seeing the similarities and just asking Jesus, okay, bring this home here. I want the direct experience. I'm not going to, get into a synthetic compare contrast thing. I want that experience. And I think it helped me traveling to so many. I was in India. I was in Delhi, and I was in different. I got to meet so many different people from so many different paths. But I kind of got I'll call it the Jesus tractor beam. Early on, raised Christian, and then I got in with the Course. I got like really in. Then I had the revelatory experiences, and then I could just feel the connection and love, and started to be able to just let Jesus put the words in my mouth. Whether I was in a Hindu temple, whether I was in a mosque, whether I was in a Christian Science church, and so forth. To me, it was all about the love. It was all about the connection, and letting Jesus use the words to show me that connection. It wasn't about this philosophy versus that philosophy, or this or that. I actually, that's some of the things I think with Ken being raised Jewish, and then at the Abbey of Gethsemane, kind of converting to Catholicism, and then going through the Course. I could see early on when I was reading Ken's writings that he would say that, the Jesus of the Course and Jesus of the Bible, and Jesus was in my mind laughing, going, "It's just me. I'm don't put me in this book or that book. I don't think I fit. Don't think I fit in either one of those books. I'm the Lord. I'm the way, the truth, and the life." But by the time I was going to those first lectures in Roscoe, like in my little yard sale car, I was hearing Jesus so clearly. So Ken was giving the lecture, and I was getting the talk from Jesus on Ken's lecture. You can only imagine how helpful.
Oh, wow.
Where it's on, where it's off. Ken got a little bit into the level confusion thing too, and basically Jesus talks very clearly in the course about level confusion, but Ken set up a system that was a little different than what Jesus was talking about. So he was telling me, well, David, it's really simple, that if you believe that anything of time and space is causative, you've got some level confusion. Only the mind is causative. There's nothing outside the mind. And it's not a comparison between right mind, wrong mind versus eternity, uh, or the split mind. It's actually day by day. Are you willing to practice what I'm teaching you? Are you willing to see that food is not causative?
Yeah.
Food doesn't make you fat or lack of skinny. Are you willing to use it with climate? Are you willing to use it in relationships? Are you willing to go see everything as your mind,
Yeah.
and you're never being influenced. Nobody ever upsets you ever. You've never had an upsetting situation ever. Your mind interpreted the situation in a egoic way through the
Yeah.
filter, and that brought the upset, not
Well, that's why the
with
mind training is so
yes,
important.
yes, it is.
It's the only way you're going to figure that out.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's almost like my friend Dorothy, when she was at Roscoe for some years, and she was in the kitchen and and also in the garden. But she finally requested, she said, we during the workshops and lectures, could we have speakers installed while we're preparing the food? And then Ken said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So they could listen in.
yeah.
Then everybody would be in the workshop and they would be taking notes, like lots of
Oh,
notes,
yeah.
lots of notes. And then they would put the notes down, put the pen down, and go to the kitchen to
Mm.
get their food. And there's Dorothy standing behind the bar where get what you're going to get, and looking at her and taking some food and going, too salty. Then the next person, not enough salt.
Uh,
And Dorothy, then Dorothy would say, I can't believe it. They take all those notes and come
that's
and
right.
judge the food.
That's right.
You see, it was kind of fascinating for her because she was like into practical application. And that's what you're bringing up here. The point of transfer of training is to transfer those brilliant teachings, those every day. What an amazing workbook lesson, but to transfer it to everything and everyone without
Yeah.
exception.
Yeah.
So it's so great, you're here, you say you're 81, but you're just in a twinkly, your eyes are twinkling, you're like a child who's just been given
I
the
do feel like
keys.
I'm waking up.
Yeah, you've now got the keys to transfer of training, which is so amazing because then you get more and more feeling like everything's telepathic. You start to see things more like a mind
Mm.
that's like, does this thought feel good? No, it must not be real. Versus
Mhm.
being a person. The biggest trap I find in this world is that there's a steadfast belief that you can bring the truth into illusions. And that's one thing that was so great with Ken over and over, the metaphysics. No, you have to bring the illusions to
Yeah.
truth. But when you start to do it experientially, it gets kind of interesting. It gets really activated because you start to realize, wow, so all this time I was thinking of myself as a person in the world,
Yeah.
and now this starts to loosen. I start to have these signs and symbols showing up. I start to have these deep prayers, these deep meditations, where I start to realize that you can't really spiritualize matter. It's like Mary Baker Eddy was teaching.
Yeah.
There's no mind in matter. There's no life, truth, substance, intelligence in matter. But experientially, wow, talk about a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view, like the Aladdin song I was singing
Yeah.
yesterday. That takes us into like an exciting adventure, and I think that's what you're witnessing for me and for all of us, is that here 28 years of thinking I'm on my way, I'm on my way. And then suddenly, autobiography, he's really on his way. What devotion, woo, whoa.
Yeah.
And then the steps come even to the mystery school, and all the thoughts about I'm 81 or I'm this and how will I deal with this? And it's Mexico. My God, Jesus doesn't really want me to go to Mexico. When I first
Oh,
came down and did my first, retreat in Guadalajara, and some of you have heard the story, but a friend of mine, it was actually a man from Cincinnati who was supposed to set up two gatherings in Guadalajara, and he just forgot about the second one. So after the first one, we were like, okay, where do we go next? And he said, what? And we said, for the second retreat. And he said, whoops. So we came up to Ajijic, which is right here, and I stayed with Reverend Tim and this and that, and I was just praying, meditating. Okay, go with the flow. All right, that was great. One retreat, that's the plan. So I mean, and then right before I was leaving, there was a big real estate book uh, that was there in his house, Reverend Tim's house, and Francis and my friend Suzanne were there, and Suzanne and Francis have been with me for years. Suzanne just said, "Please don't let David see this book. My God, if he sees this book, we could end up in Mexico." She was raised Mormon and United States, the same kind of feeling like Mexico. So I saw the book, I opened it up, and this was the house. And I said, can we get in to see it on the way to the airport? And thus, again, Jesus's plan, dropping things in, totally unexpected. And, eventually, yeah, we it kind of, it works well down here. But also, I think it's the perception of time, coming down here, mañana,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a different perception of time, which is just proving Einstein had it right with his
you did.
relativity and the things I showed that Saturday. This is like an experiential training ground for the mind.
It
And
is.
I always say, I joke now, I say, well, when you really get like 90% through your mind training, and the last 10, the ego is going to take a stand like the Alamo, like you're not going all the way with this, I'll get you in the end. Then Jesus counters with, I'll send him to Mexico. That's, and then you come and you go, holy moly, nothing, you can't count on anything of the
Nope,
world. And Jesus is like, good, you're you're getting it,
you're
you're
getting there.
you're getting there. Yeah, yeah. So it's a great, joyful adventure. And I just want to thank you for coming on to do this, because we're just doing this for the whole universe,
It's just fun.
It's just fun. I
Yep,
knew we would just have fun
I
today.
know.
We did this much preparation,
None. I was
zero.
wondering about that.
That's our 145 years of
Yeah,
experience
right.
and zero
The
preparation.
over the hill gang.
That's the Over the Hill gang. Let's get the geezers out there and have some fun. So I guess if there's no, we've got our microphone, but nobody wants to share anything, ask anything. Okay, if there's anybody that wants to type in a quick question, now's your chance. Yeah.
Can you say anything about Kundalini or energy in general?
Well,
I'll tell you three questions.
okay.
I have a friend who is a mystic and is very ill. How do I reconcile this? And then how do we release the illusion of separations?
Okay, we've released the separation through mind training. As far as your friend who's a mystic who's ill, follow Joni's advice that she did for herself with her daughter. It's your mystic's story. It's none of your business, actually, because sickness, as Jesus says, sickness is only the mind can seem to be sick. There's no such thing as a sick body. It's always, all illness is mental illness. That's a beautiful line from Jesus. And then the first one, what was that one? The Kundalini and energy, chakras. Yeah. Well, from the ancient Indian teachings and the Vedas and everything, all the inquiries and studies, it seems to be, it's just a stepping stone idea to come back to the mind, because even energies, centers in the body that seem to be in different parts of the body and have different things, like the crown chakra different from the base chakras and so forth. But these are all stepping stone ideas. Yogananda was quite aware of those, very well aware. And I've had people that even studied and followed Yogananda saying he still seemed to believe that the creator had something to do with the world, creating the world. And again, that's just stepping stone ideas to, if you really go with Jesus, this is the way, the truth, and the life, and it just takes you beyond the concepts into a direct experience. And it also takes you into the Beatitudes. Weren't they lovely, those Beatitudes in the Bible that everyone's been saying? Those sound wonderful. My gosh, I would love to have attitudes like that. And Jesus is like, yeah, those are your natural attitudes. Those are your being attitudes, or like Abraham Maslow reached the top of self-actualization and the B values. That's the same thing that Jesus was talking about. But what we could say is that all energy, whether it's Kundalini energy in the spine, whether it's energies in the 7 chakras, whether it's vortexes and energy in different locations. They talk about vortexes of energy in Sedona and different parts. All of that is part of the made-up illusion, because energy itself, if you go back to even quantum physics, they go back to the quantum field where they say everything is connected and everything is energy, but it's not talking about an energy that is of this world. Einstein would tell you that when he looked at the world, he saw that there was something called the speed of light that was constant in the cosmos. But even that is just a reflection of the consistency of the light of heaven that's beyond the cosmos. Because even the speed of light, who you are doesn't have speed, because there's no higher or low speed. You can't say, well, I'm just a low speed Christ. And my partner, we have problems. She's a high speed Christ and I'm a low speed Christ. You see how funny it sounds to put high speed or low speed. But this is the talk of energy. I mean, I remember going to course groups and they'd say, I was having such a great day. And then I met this person in the afternoon that was such low energy. I'm saying, so you got unhappy because you met a low energy person? Yeah, I of course was high energy, but they came across my path with their low energy. I said, what does that mean? Negativity. They were negative. But see, what Jesus is saying is there's no world outside your mind. If you perceive negativity, you believe it. If you perceive attack and grievances, you believe it. It's not true, but you believe it. So, he says, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings that I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Whoa, you can't be a victim if it's all your mind. There's no victimization in one. You need two. You need an inner and an outer. So to me, that's why I say the whole workbook of A Course in Miracles is to collapse the belief in inner and outer. Wouldn't that be a fun realization, that there is nothing outside of me, and that me is a beautiful mind that is the salvation of the world. The salvation of the world depends on me. I know that sometimes the very sincere Christians will read that lesson and go, well, there's Because only Jesus is the salvation of the world. And how can you say the salvation of the world depends on me if Jesus is the only savior? And then Jesus is in the mind saying, you're me, I'm you, we're the same one. You haven't realized it, but but you will. It's your destiny to realize that there's only one of us. And that's a deep teaching. Now, to practically live that every day, when you're on the highway and someone cuts you off, you're me. Oh, thank you. Thank you for cutting me off. Thank you for not blowing your horn or turning on your turn signal. Thank you. You know, you start with starting to throw your bubbles of blessings towards everything, because that's forgiveness, is that the atonement is the awareness that the separation never happened. And if it really never happened, then what is this grievances? What are these preferences?
Do you know what I noticed? Well, a while back, that, you know, when you see something that looks horrific on TV or something, or somebody's condemned to whatever, or like Dead Men Walking, like the other day, I'm finding myself not seeing them guilty anymore. There isn't any. He didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that starts to turn on, and you say, "Wow, yep, nobody's guilty here.
Yeah.
Nobody."
That's the greatest.
Yeah.
Because we're just to remember the innocence. And so I think it comes with trust, though. I mean, you following these signs and symbols, you know, starts to build this feeling, like really deep feeling that I'm really cared for.
Yeah.
Even with my preferences or even with my doubts, it doesn't seem to matter to this holy presence. It still continues to provide for me, to show me the way in pretty obvious ways. You know, 3 signs.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, just before you came down here. Those are amazing. And it's important to share that too, because then when you share it, then I think someone says, oh my gosh, I need to pay attention to the signs. Even if I'm not hearing an inner voice,
Yeah.
I can pay attention to the signs. You know, Joni's doing it, I can do it too. She looks like she's having fun. She's 81 and she's having fun watching
Yeah.
signs, and
Yeah.
I can do it too. You see how it builds the confidence. Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Does make it fun.
It does. I did say that one time. I said, why shouldn't awakening be fun?
Yeah.
Why do we have to hold it so darkly? And of course, you have to just acknowledge if it seems dark, then there's obviously a lesson there. But then once you kind of get into the flow of listen, follow, then if the Holy Spirit needs happy learners, that must mean that you just are a willing learner, willing to
Yeah.
follow the guidance. Yeah, merge with the guidance.
Yeah. Right before we did this, when you said we're going to do something together, you know, of course, you know, all the doubt, of course, it all came rushing in like, oh my God, you're going to make a fool out of yourself. You don't even know what you're talking. Here we go, all of it. And I woke up at 4:30 in that morning. I shared it in the group the other day, and just these icy fingers of fear. You know that everybody's experienced that, and like somebody squeezing your heart. You know, and I heard that voice say, you don't have to listen to that. You don't have to listen. Don't run. Don't run. And I thought to myself, yeah, I don't have to listen to that. I'm not going to run.
You
That-
shifted gears real quick. 4 a.m.
But it was good to know you could shift gears.
Yeah.
It's good to know you don't have to believe that. So, anyway.
Yeah, this 2-week visit down here, and it's a beautiful testimony how we grow stronger in the truth, how our faith expands, how our trust expands,
Yeah.
and how that's the most important thing. It was never about the specifics. You know, I really like that part where after the whole bringing the course in that Helen did, and then the whole publication thing, and years that before Helen passed, you know, Jesus just really told her heart to heart, you know, it really wasn't about the course. I love you. And it's like, oh my gosh, that puts everything into perspective, even our collaborations and everything that we seem to do together to shine our light. It's all a big I love you. And that in the end is the one thing that has the meaning. That is the meaning.
Mhm.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do feel that love.
Yeah.
You really, really do.
Yeah.
Just want more all the time.
Yeah, I know. You have tears of love and joy rolling down your cheeks and like
Yeah, that's right.
uncontainable feeling.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us, and such an honor to be here with all of you. And I always liked that when I would travel around to meet people who had been into spirituality even for a long time. I would just be there like a sponge, just sitting at the kitchen table, having a cup of coffee, just smiling and thinking, thank you, God. This is saving me thousands of years. This person has walked through. Now I don't have to walk through it. I have a nice lunch with them, and then I just Alpha and the Omega are together. Okay, thank you all.